broken and conversations be open. I can't be holding on to nothing that ain't keeping me. What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Just John, and this is POETivation. Po up, po up, po up. As you can see, I got some wines here, some selections here from the finest wine companies imported from all different types of walks of life. I think some of them are black owned, and I just wanted to take some time to shout out the sensuality. You know, I'm all about the brand, so check me out. You feel me? Sensual Saturdays. Make sure y'all check it out. Anyways, like I said, I wanted to speak on something today, and it's gonna be very, very controversial for some folks. Some people may be, might be triggered, might have some emotional responses to some of the things that are talked about today. So I just wanted to be very, very cautious about going into this topic today, right? I don't want anybody coming for anyone's head, canceling anybody for just having their opinion and having a conversation. But with that being said, today I wanted to talk about gender wars, all right? We are in a space and time right now where I feel there is a very, very big push on gender wars, like male versus female energy, right? And I want to expose some of that and talk to y'all today about why that is like just the wrong thing for us to do in today's society, right? So, we could speak on it on the surface and then we'll dive deeper. With so much that we have going on in the world right now and so much that we have to tackle and talk about from different communities, different cultures, let's just speak on it, right? Like, let's get right to the point. There's so much things going on in the world for us to be trying to go battle each other for who's right and who's wrong. And when we speak about culture, a lot of times we're speaking about black folk, right? Like, let's take the blanket off. Let's stop trying to make it like a blanketed statement. We use culture maybe to be like appropriate or like to sound, professional or, whatever the words may be. But we're speaking on black culture, speaking on black people when we talk about culture, right? And so with that, in our culture, in our society, oftentimes we're experiencing these gender wars where it's like male energy versus female energy. We have the case on Tory Lanez and Meg the Stallion, right? And everybody's perspective and opinions and what's going on and who's right and who's wrong and like this energy and this needs to be apologized for and this person and that. And it's like a lot of victim blaming and things like that. And I'll say this, right? There's definitely right people and there's definitely wrong people in this world. I'll never say like who's right and who's wrong, and it's very subjective based on opinions and things that happen. I get it. But when we speak on like the basic principles and foundation of like humanity, people know right from wrong. And that's where we start to talk about logic versus emotion and things like that. We're going to get into all of these cool topics and hot topics or buzzwords or whatever you guys want to call it, right? So let's talk. I brought up the Meg the Stallion versus Tory Lanez situation, and I wanted to speak on that, I guess, first because it's a hot topic. And I wrote a tweet that was like, yo, point out all the guys that people are talking about that are uplifting the behavior of Tory Lanez. Right? There might be some guys out here, there might be some people I don't know, but me speaking specifically about myself and about the circle, the community of men that I have around me, there's nobody here that I think is saying anything positive about what Tory Lanez did, right? I feel like we're all very much like disappointed in a lot of ways in our community, and a lot of ways it looks kind of bad regardless of what the outcome was, right? Some people may have wanted him to win for various other reasons, and obviously for other reasons, some people may not. Regardless, I feel justice should be served, and I feel like the system doesn't always do that, but we want the best, and right, and hopefully this situation there was justice, right? So with that, I have no specific point that I want to point on Tory Lanez's situation or Meg Stallion, but this specific controversy is creating like a barrier between men and women, right? It's causing like an uproar even more so in this gender war, right? We're experiencing so many things where women are talking about like how men ain't shit, right? And how niggas ain't doing this and ain't doing that, and where are the good men nowadays? And where are the handymen that have a drill and they know how to like mix concrete and build and create, where are those men, right? It's a lot of like Twitter fingers right now. And on the flip side, a lot of the men are saying like, where are all the women, right? Where are the caregivers? Where are the nurturers? Where are the ones that want to be less of the thugs and the gangsters in this world and popping pussy or whatever? And where are like the real women? So it's like this constant battle of like who's right and who's wrong, who's more, who's less, you know. And I think, you know, I want to very much point out the obvious. In my opinion, it's obvious that there is not equality when it comes to women's pay and rights of their bodies and various other things, right? There's a definite battle between women gaining access to equality when it comes to men. Where it's primarily coming from is corporate America, right? Like the workforce, the workplace, environments, like unsafe environments or unfair environments, and things of that nature, right? And a lot of times that's where patriarchy stemmed from, right? Like they stemmed from this idea that the white man controlled corporate America, and under that you had a ladder. You had, you know, the men of color, then under that you had women, then you had women of color at the very bottom, right? And so this battle is so like, I guess like excruciatingly painful to me, because I feel like women are fighting for like not being on the bottom anymore. Black women, specifically women of color, and it's like it's heart-wrenching because I have so many black women and friends, platonic and not, around me that I hear constantly on a daily basis how men ain't shit, niggas ain't shit, this and that, and then like I'm the one that they're, you know, in a sense, venting to, and I'm just like, hey, hello, like, but what about, you know, me? And they're like, oh, but not you though, but you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about so-and-so and so-and-so. And then I'm like, but that's the problem right there in a lot of ways, where you guys can't acknowledge the fact that there are men that are shit, that are helping, that are doing these things that you're asking for, and they're not being celebrated or represented enough in the culture and the community. So then what happens is we end up ostracizing those people and focusing on the problem. And what happens is the problem stays the problem. So let's just say, for example, you know, I like to think of this in a sense, I correlate it with bullying, right? Because for me, bullying does nothing but it downs someone else for someone else to feel better about themselves. And for me, it's like, why I equate it to bullying is because let's say there's a situation where a woman has a bad treatment or unfair situation with a man. And she's like venting to her homegirl about how like men ain't shit. This happened to me, this specific situation. And the other woman goes and says, man, I can relate because I've been through the same type of situation with this guy. And this is what's happened to me, right? Men ain't shit. We both agree, right? Then they go and they see a man in their perception of this man is already altered based on the conversation that you're having, the energy that you're putting out into the world, right? So it's like, okay, cool. We had this conversation about how men ain't shit. So now I go into this world and I see this man, and now my perception of him is already this, right? His intentions is already this, or I'm already putting him at this bottom standard because men ain't shit, right? And so what tends to happen is because of that energy, you encounter another bad situation, and that further proves your point. So now you're moving into this space with this energy, and you end up leaving with the same coat you basically put on. And then a lot of times it enables the men ain't shit culture. You know, it enables the whole like, you know, and I'm saying men ain't shit, men ain't shit, men ain't shit. On the flip side, we could speak on the men that is bashing women and all of those things as well. But I'm just speaking on like what I see in front of me on a daily basis. Twitter, social media, Instagram, the reels, all of the things, right? Conversations, etc., music, etc., popular culture, etc., right? And so, like for prime example, I watch Drink Champs. Drink Champs is one of my favorite podcasts to watch. Shout out to Nori. Shouts out to Revolt TV, EFN, Miami. You guys are putting on, right? But in that, there was a Christmas episode with Amber Rose, right? And Amber Rose was speaking about. Amber Rose came in with an agenda. Right? Amber Rose, no disrespect to Amber Rose. She's beautiful. She's very articulate. She's very intelligent. She came in with an agenda. She went on Drink Champs. She doesn't drink. And she was on the Christmas special. They were in a strip club. Maybe Nori didn't do his homework. I'm not too sure. Maybe he thought that Amber Rose would be perfect for a strip club situation and blah, blah, blah. I'm not too sure. I can't speak for any other man. But basically got on there with Murder Mook and Loaded Lux, two New York niggas. and like talked about feminism, and I felt shitty watching that episode. I'm yelling at the TV because it almost made us entirely look bad. Not to say that Murder Mook or Loaded Lux didn't hold their own, but it was just like the context of the situation was so unnecessary. And a lot of these times, like our conversations end up, we end up rivaling, if that's a word, because we have disagreements, right? So, for example, Amber Rose got on the podcast, and basically Murder Mook was doing a freestyle about how, to sum it up, about how people with no talent are talented because they're making money off of not having a talent. He spoke on the generalization of people, right? So when he referred to niggas, he said niggas. When he referred to men, he said niggas. When he referred to women, he said hoes, right? Both have, quote unquote, a derogatory term, and they've come from negative origins. But Amber Rose told him straight up, like, yo, why do you refer to women as hoes? I don't like that. It's disrespectful to me. It's disrespectful to the women around me. Case in point, right? I think it's very fair for her to say. I think as a man, you should automatically be like, you know what? You're right. I apologize. I won't call you a hoe. I won't say hoe in front of you if you don't feel comfortable. But they engaged in the conversation because they're New York niggas, right? Nori stayed out of it. Shout out to Nori. I still fuck with him. But whatever. Anyway, we going to talk about the New York niggas shit, because not that I feel away. It's just I've dealt with enough energy when it comes to being in the North area that I've experienced where there's no Southern hospitality, right? There's no like, ability to say like, damn, I have manners and I have etiquette as to, and I'm not speaking on everybody, but it's just, there's not as much of a need to want this. Like, there's not enough like, oh, I want to show this woman that I have manners, right? I want to hold the door for you and say, excuse me, and et cetera, et cetera. Maybe there are. From my experience, it's not as much as I see down here in South Florida. So with that being said, they got on the podcast, and instead of like, speaking for men or they basically try to battle or like, what's the word I'm looking for? Argue like her point, Amber Rose's point, and saying like, oh, well, why is being like saying hoes a problem? They even got to the point where Murder Mook was like, shit, my granddaddy calls my mama and sister a hoe. And I'm like, yo, this is going nowhere fast, right? But the point why I brought this up was because I was like so baffled at how like the whole situation played out. Like, Amber Rose definitely had an agenda. She definitely wanted to get across her point on a podcast that solidifies black culture and speaking to black men specifically on how we need to uplift women. And I completely agree with her. Now, with that, I feel like we got lost in the whole battle because as much as we want to use these terms, or people use terms or whatever, and we use like the words like reclamatory or derogatory. Like, okay, reclamatory is, for those of you that don't know, like if I'm a woman and I'm saying I don't like to be called a bitch by a man. A man can't call me a bitch, but I can call myself a bitch because I'm basically giving myself power to the word versus being viewed as a derogatory slur. Like somebody else is calling me this, so now I feel negative about it. I can call myself it so that way I can empower myself to say that I'm bigger than, right? That's basically reclamatory. I'm layman's terms, you get me? I'm not sticking to Webster when I'm explaining this. Just bear with me, right? So a lot of times we fall victim to like, okay, cool. Let me slow down. A lot of times we fall victim to having, okay, we can say it, but you can't. Or this is right, but this is wrong in this context. And I felt that that place just wasn't the space for anybody to have that conversation. It was like we're in a strip club and we're drinking and smoking and we're talking about hip hop and culture, and we're using this to down the fact that he used the word hoe in a freestyle or in a written, whatever it was. And they just couldn't see eye to eye. It was cool. There was no problem. It was no debate. And I respect Nori because he stayed out of it. But he's like, you came to somebody's podcast that I feel is the most respectful when it comes to women, when it comes to his guests, when it comes to his wife, when it comes to hip hop, and when it comes to the culture. Like, he's the most like like non-conflictable person that you can think of. Like he always wants the good out of everybody, right? And you came on the podcast and you basically incited a war in a sense, gender war, right? And so I just felt so distasteful by it because I'm like, I left there with no representation. Like I couldn't say, yo, Loaded Lux and Murder Mook held it down and said like, yeah, this is how men feel and this is how we have to make a difference. And yeah, I understand what women are saying, but this is how we feel. And then on the flip side, it's like, I understood what Amber Rose was saying and I agreed with her completely for women. But then I'm like, but damn, but you look at who you're talking to. Like, of course, it's gonna be discourse because look at the space and the people that look at where you brought the agenda. You brought the agenda to a lion's cage. You get what I'm saying? It's like you brought meat to the lion's cage. Of course, that was gonna be a distasteful conversation. And so I want to move on, but the point of that was like it was so. It didn't push anything. It didn't push no envelope. If anything, it set us back because it almost made it seem as if all the women in the room disagreed with men and men disagreed with the women. But I don't feel most men feel that we can't be respectful to women. I just think that the same way that we want to respect women by not calling them hoes, or you guys don't want us to call you hoes or categorize as, these words, I feel the same should be brought into respect with men. So we should stop the men ain't shit culture. We should stop the even calling, there's women that call men bitches or like short or like small or like whatever y'all like feminine or whatever y'all call. There's certain connotations that I feel are also negative, but we don't like dispel that because at the end of the day, it's deeply rooted, especially for women. So I'm gonna dive further because I feel like I'm straying from my points as far as the gender wars go. But I feel in this society, the problem that we're facing is a lot of men think logically and a lot of women think emotionally. And when I say men think logically, I'm not saying that men are smarter than women. I'm not saying that men have all the answers or they're the truth tellers of the world. No, logic just simply means fact and emotion means opinion, right? Fact versus opinion. And really it should be both, right? Like I think in a conducive relationship or anybody that's trying to better themselves should know how to utilize fact and opinion, logic and emotion, right? So if I'm a man who thinks logically, that I need a woman who can also understand when I'm thinking logically that she can meet me at that place, right? And then vice versa, the same flip. If I have a woman who thinks emotionally, I need to be, as a man, able to take my logic out of the equation and say, okay, emotionally, I see where I could have went wrong. I see where I could have hurt you. I see where we need to take a second from each other to distance ourselves to come back to this conversation, right? Because there's no resolve in us reacting on our emotions, right? And so here's where I think a lot of things go wrong because a man might have an issue with something with a woman and the woman's thinking emotionally like, okay, damn, like I could say, man, this was messed up. I don't like this. I don't want this to happen to me no more. And then emotionally, the woman's like, well, I didn't like the way that you approached me with the situation, right? And in that, it's like, damn, okay, now there's two problems. One's the problem of what happened, and two is the problem of how it was approached. And then there's one that's logic, and there's one that's emotional. And for me, it's like, there's never a time where I've been in a situation personally where I felt like the woman took their emotions to the side and said, hey, okay, cool. I felt this way, but I'm going to put this to the side for a second so that way I can understand where you're coming from, so that way I can then tell you how I feel about what's going on, right? It's always like, well, no, I feel this way and this is what it is. And so a lot of times there's a disconnect because I'm thinking logically while you're thinking emotionally. And I had a situation that happened in a relationship with someone where I'm like, I'm sorry, but like I don't react based off of my emotions. I react based off of facts. So if there's something that's happening and I see it happening, that's where my reaction is coming from. I'm not reacting all the time. There might be times where I react emotionally or whatever. I'm human, you feel me? But there's times where I'm like, I didn't approach this situation coming from an emotion. I wasn't like, oh, you hurt my feelings, so now I had to say this. No, it was like, this is what I don't like, and I don't want this to happen to me. So we have to have a conversation. You get what I'm saying? Logic and emotion. I feel like if you have a perfect balance of the two, then you have a steady and fruitful relationship, because both of you guys can come to understanding. If a woman can come to the man's to stoop to his level of logic and say, hey, okay, cool, I can understand that you're thinking in this way. Okay, let me understand you. It's all about understanding. It's all about making a choice to say, okay, cool, this is my partner, this is somebody I care about, this is my friend, this is my whoever, and we're having a disagreement. How can I then understand you? And vice versa. As a man, you should be able to come to a woman and say, damn, okay, I always think logically. I'm thinking solution based, or I'm thinking like what happened versus what didn't happen. Let me take that to the equation. Okay, I did something that made you feel away. I apologize. If you need to take some time, take a second away from me so that you can calm down and we can have a conversation, then let's do so. Right? And I think that's the healthy way of approaching things. I've been reading this book. It's called All About Love by Bell Hooks, because I've been wanting to better myself in this space, right? I talk all about love in poetry and in my music and in my situations, my day-to-day. I move out of love, so I wanted to have a deeper understanding, right? And in the book, I kind of felt certain ways because I disagree with her in a lot of ways. Bell Hooks is she's queer, but I don't know if she identifies as non-binary. So if I say her and her pronouns are otherwise, then I apologize. I have a very brief biography of who Bell Hooks is. But this book was the first book that I picked up and was like, okay, I want to dive deeper, right? So with that, she dispels a lot of modern days resources or books or self-help books about love, because a lot of them speak about like desensitizing yourself to love. A lot of them speak about how we need to, as a society, like realize that love is a fallacy. It's a fantasy that we'll never ever truly understand or experience. So we need to numb ourselves to it. And she dispelled a lot of books, because a lot of men are the ones who write about love. And throughout the book, she probably cites maybe 15, 20 books in her points. And I kind of felt like, as a writer, she kind of used those sightings to show credibility that she's done her research in the topic. But the sightings didn't really like pack a punch or drive her point home. It just kind of like filled the gaps to kind of understand where she was going with her points. And I felt like a lot of her conversations were speaking on like victimizing women and villainizing men. And it was like, for me, just to backtrack, the book is all about love, and it speaks on like love, but from an individualistic standpoint. Like, okay, me as a person, I have to learn how to love myself before I can love anybody. And that, I feel like that is like the premise, that's the base, that is something that's very important that I've learned over the course of this year, right? And in that, love is a choice. Love is not a feeling, it's a choice. It's a decision that you make. You have to, like, there's going to be times where you don't feel like loving someone, but you have to make the choice to do it anyway. You know what I'm saying? That's what real love is. That's what unconditional love is, right? But in the book, so there's a lot of things that I agree with what Bell Hooks is saying. From the female perspective, I feel like there's so much woman struggle that she speaks on that is so truthful that it kind of like makes you feel like everything she's saying is valid. But from a man reading this book, I was like, this is coming from a very biased place. Like, I can't tell you how many men I feel are the exact opposite of the men that she's generalizing in the book. You know, when we talk about like, most men crave dominance and crave power and crave authority over women. That's not true. I know most men that I know are very I won't say submissive to their woman, but they care about their opinion just as much as their own. You know what I'm saying? Myself, I can only speak for myself in that regard, right? And then she said a bunch of other things, but I guess I'm just speaking off the top of my head. So Bell Hooks, in her book All About Love, spoke on being individuals in a relationship. And I feel like what's being spread more than anything nowadays is how to be an individual in a relationship. But you need to also know that in a relationship, you have to know that you're giving 50% to the table. And I'm not talking about as a man going 50-50 with your girl, or going 50-50 on rent, or going 50-50 with bills or whatever. I mean, as a person in a relationship, speaking on monogamous relationships, we're not talking about polygamy, because even with polygamy, you have to first solidify a one-on-one connection with somebody. But let's speak on monogamy right now. You're giving 50% in a relationship. The other percent is required, right? Michelle Obama talks about there are times where she was given 70 and Obama was given 30, and then there was times where Obama was given 60 and she was given 40. Those things it's what's called balance, right? That's what keeps the equilibrium. But at the end of it all, you're giving 50, especially in the beginning of a relationship. You're giving 50 and the other person's giving 50. There shouldn't be an unbalance or imbalance in that, because then what happens is one person ends up carrying more of the load than the other. So in that, you're bringing 50% to the table. So yes, as a person, you should know how to love yourself and be an individual, but you should also know how to come to the table and say, okay, I'm now in a relationship with somebody. How do I know how to compromise? How can I bring what I bring to the table as an individual into this space and love on somebody else, and where they're from and their culture and their traditions and how their love language is and what they admire in a relationship, in myself, and the things that they can see from me that I can't. Right? Because I like to think of relationships as like a mirror, right? Your significant other, chances are, is a mirror to you. So, the book it's a great book, and I'm like 20 pages left to finish. But I honestly say I wish I had a heart-to-heart with Bell Hooks, because I feel like a lot of it spoke from like trauma from men that weren't the best to her in situations. Maybe they didn't have a father figure, or they were alcoholics, or they were just finding out who they were. Age could be a big part of it. When you met these people, the last relationships that they were in, there's so many variables that come to the understanding of who these men were in those positions. So it's kind of hard to categorize most men as this, or most men think this way, or most men are, because it's not true. And so reading the book, I was almost like triggered, because oftentimes in relationships, I get categorized as like, oh, well, you're a man, so you think this way. No, I don't. Like, how can you assume that? Like, you never asked me how I felt. And then oftentimes that becomes the normality. Oh, men don't share their feelings. We don't share our feelings because you're already assuming sometimes what our feelings are before we even get there, But that's kind of like I guess the defense that a male comes from with this gender war. So I don't want to be defensive in this conversation. I want to shed light on why I feel certain things are like misconstrued. So one of the questions I was asked in my Instagram post on when I wanted to talk about gender wars and some topics was, does alpha women exist? And somebody brought that up. And for me, I think the whole ideology on alpha is still trying to identify that someone is better than, right? Like, even within that, now you're saying as a woman now, there's a ladder in women, not just colorism or sexism or this, but now there's a ladder, as in there's alpha women and there's, I guess, whatever you would call mid-tier women, or bottom of the barrel women, or whatever you would call them, identify. And then with men, it's the same situation. Okay, alpha males, and then males that think with their emotions, and then males that, are sensitive or fragile or whatever, And to me, there's no ladder. There's no of the two. You shouldn't have to identify yourself as an alpha to say that, hey, I'm confident, or I speak on my emotions well, or I know how to speak, or I know how to compromise, or I know how to love on somebody. So for me, yes, an alpha, people, this society nowadays, they use those coin terms. But to me, somebody who's an alpha is just somebody who understands themselves enough to be able to articulate what it is that they want and how they want it, period. Like, that's as simply put as that. It could be a male, it could be a woman. And I feel like as us in our society, we need to start normalizing coming to relationships in that regard, like being that upfront, that truthful. Hey, this is what I require. This is what I want in this relationship. And if you can't do this, then I have to move on, or I can't be in this. Or maybe I don't even want a relationship. I just want this, right? Whatever it is. So with that, I feel like I spoke on so many topics, and maybe I didn't dive too deeply into each one, and maybe some of y'all are gonna scrutinize me for some of the things I have to say, right? But overall, I feel like I love women, I love black women, I love all types, right? And I'm gonna leave with this, because a lot of people, they prejudge me. A lot of times I used to get like, oh, John, you have a type. And I'm laughing because I'm like, you don't even know half of the women I've dated. So how could you say I have a type? What's my type? And I almost like entertain it every time. So what does my type look like? It's curly hair, light skin, pretty eyes, just like me. Like light skin, nice hair, pretty eyes. Like that's what you think my type is. So because I'm this type of person, you think that this is what I look for in a woman. No, chances are I've dated all types of women, different colors, different backgrounds, different origins, different, I guess, status, like class, if you will, of all different types, right? And so I just almost laugh when I hear these things, because I almost get sexualized more than I anticipate. There's times where women are looking at me and they're like, oh yeah, John, you have mad bitches. And I'm like, really? Because I'm only talking to you. So are you projecting, or are you like automatically assuming what it is that I got going on without asking me? You know what I'm saying? It's almost like this preconceived notion, like, oh, John, you're a sex symbol because you do poetry, or you're light skinned so you got mad bitches, or like, oh, you're a player because you know how to talk. It's like, nah, I'm just a human who has emotions, who knows how to express himself. I used to get categorized all the time as because I'm a male or a man or black man, whatever, that I don't know how to express myself. I'm like, I'm a poet, shorty. Of course I know how to express my feelings and my emotions. That's all I do. That's what I get paid to do. It's just a matter of whether or not you're able to accept it, and whether or not you give me a space for me to be comfortable enough to share that. That's all that is sometimes. And it's not on just your job to do that. Sometimes it takes two to tango. But it's like, do we have a space where we feel comfortable to share? Maybe not. So maybe we need to work on that first before you get all of the feelings and emotions out of me, right? So this is just a cool little conversation. I know I dragged it a little bit more than usual, but I really wanted to like speak on some of these topics because it's fun, but it's also like real world situations, real life things that we go through and we talk about, and like I talk about these things in my poems. I stress how much I have a poem called Learning, where I'm talking about being a king for a black queen, and like having to learn all the things and all the emotions and the turmoil that you go through, to then have to carry that load with all the stuff I go through, to then be able to just understand you. It's like, it's overbearing sometimes, but as a man, I have to learn to accept that. And as a woman, you have to learn to accept that sometimes these like men have more going on internally than what you think. You know what I'm saying? Like the load or the burden of society, or even vice versa. You know what I'm saying? As women have so much going on as well. And us like fighting each other about who's hurt more, or who's damaged more, or who's right and wrong is not helping. You know what I'm saying? I feel like this gender war is separating us even more, and that's what they're designed to want us to do. That's what they want from us. They want us to separate. They want us to separate. I was watching something. Man, I wish I could quote exactly where it was from, but it might have been Drink Champs, believe it or not. I don't know if it was. No, it was Ab-Soul and Charlemagne. It was an interview with Ab-Soul and Charlemagne, and they were talking about how the main objective for media is to separate black people and black culture. Look at the pandemic when it was Black Lives Matter and we were protesting on the streets. And the media used and spun so many things to try to put us against each other. And in a sense, they felt like, oh, we got their best punch. We're good now. We can go right back to doing the same bullshit that we were doing before the pandemic, before the protests, you know, and we as the culture feel like, damn, well, shit, that was our best punch. What can we do now? We got to just shut up and take it now. And that's not what's something I'm going to stand on. I'm going to speak until I can't speak no more. If somebody tries to take my life, just know that y'all are the people that I care about, and I do this for y'all, and I do this for the ones that I love and the people that are around me, because I definitely feel that this microphone has gave me a platform to be able to share who I am, but also to share what's in my head, what's in my thoughts, what's in between these eyes, my brain, my heart, everything. So I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for this platform that I'm building. Thank y'all for listening, and I appreciate y'all so much. I know this was POETivation, and this is still motivation, y'all. We still want to be able to encourage each other, to love on each other, to celebrate each other, and to continue to win, right? So let's do that. Much love. Cause we be laughing and joking and conversations be open. I can't be holding on to nothing that ain't keeping me growing.